What's up, everyone? I'm Justin with LGBT Outdoors, and we're so glad that you are tuning in tonight. We have a great program lined up for you, and I think you're going to take away a lot from it. So, thank you for taking time out of your evening and being here with us. We're going to go over a couple things before we jump in with our guest tonight. We want to remind you that we are way more than just an Instagram account. We get so many followers on there, and it's growing great. But we are more than just that. We have a website that's up. It's called lgbtoutdoors.com. Very simple to get to. There's a lot of great resources on here, such as our outdoor directory. By the way, if you know of anybody that company that is LGBT friendly and involved in the outdoors, let us know so that we can add them to this directory. It's free through the rest of the year because we know it's new, as well as we've been hit hard by COVID, so we want to be able to give back to these great organizations and companies. Other thing that we've got going on here that we want to point out is our events page because we are starting to have some events come up. The two that are on here right now are virtual happy hours, basic more for Texas. We have a Fort Worth group and a Houston group that are going to be doing a happy hour. So if you want to check those out, that would be great as well. Another awesome way to connect is on our Facebook group. We have a couple different ones available, but our main one is just facebook.com/group/LGBT Outdoors. Great way to get more involved and connected with people, maybe even in your area. Last thing before we get to our guest is if you are interested in connecting with us, drop us an email, especially if you're interested in doing a blog for us or you have some great ideas that you want to use to connect other people to the great outdoors. We'd love to hear from you. Our email is info@lgbtoutdoors.com. So tonight we have two amazing people with us, Jacob and Lisa, and they are the founders of QueerBait Fishing. And tonight we're going to be diving in with them, learning a little bit more about them, fishing in general, fly fishing, and what exactly QueerBait Fishing is. So Jacob and Lisa, thank you so much for being here tonight with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Before we jump in with the whole queer bait fishing and fishing in general, we'd love to hear a little bit about each of you, or whichever one wants to go first, and just share a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up, anything that you want that can help our viewers feel a little bit more connected to you as people and not just a business or an organization.
Hmm.
You first.
Ladies first.
Oh, you're the lady.
Um, so my name is Lisa Friday. Um, I live here in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of DC. I work as a project manager for a lighting company here in the Mid Atlantic. Um, I've been fishing all my life. Uh, since I was as long as I can remember. I grew up in Georgia, and we were fishing in every pond and creek that you could stumble across. Um, I do identify as a trans woman. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm excited to be here with you.
Very cool. Thank you for being here, and Jacob.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jacob Muller. I am also located here in Alexandria, Virginia. I grew up on the eastern shore of Maryland in a little town called Easton. I grew up on a farm. I've been hunting and fishing all of my life. I spent most of my childhood outside. Um, I'm currently a project manager for a lighting company here in the Mid Atlantic region. Lisa and I actually work together, um, which is interesting because that's kind of how I got started with fly fishing was because of that connection. Um, but yeah, now I am an avid fly fisher and we're excited to kind of share our adventures with you guys.
That's really cool. So let's just dive in a little bit because the name queer bait fishing. So there's kind of a lot to unpack with the name because obviously there's a difference between bait fishing and fly fishing. I kind of know the backstory there, but go ahead and share with us, like, how did you come up with the name Queer Bait Fishing, and what is kind of your mission and what you want to accomplish with it?
So we acknowledge that queerbait is slash was a slur that was used in a derogatory way to make fun of men who attract gay men, to make fun of men who claim to act straight, or claim to be straight, but act in any kind of gay or feminine fashion. But we're kind of rebranding it, and making it a more acceptable term for our use. I had actually not heard the term queerbait until Lisa told me about it. I guess that just must have been something that the older generations use.
Oh,
We
shots
use
fired.
we use other terms. Yeah, I was called like other names that I won't say. But when Lisa brought up queerbait, we thought, I'd never heard that term before, and then I was like, oh, that's such a great name for a fly shop or a store or a brand that has anything to do with fishing, um, because the term queer is, the socially acceptable term to use now. It's how could we make that something that makes us stand out. And what we have kind of set out to do is to build a queer-friendly fishing community that is in its smallest essence, smallest form. That is what we're here to do. We started an Instagram so that we could start connecting people together, and that's really taken off. We've got a lot of people that we talk to through our Instagram DMs. Um, a lot of people have been commenting on posts that we've put up saying, "Oh my gosh, we finally found our people." And it's those little comments that are super rewarding and that we hope to continue to grow and continue to connect people.
That's very cool. Do you guys feel, I know for you, you're building a community of fishers in general, not just fly fishing. Do you think that you having a majority of fly fishing people that are connecting with you or bait fishing? And do you see that? Because if people don't realize, there is kind of this stereotype with fly fishing that fly fishing is kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but more sophisticated, I guess you would say, or more of an art form and almost belittles bait fishing. But to my understanding, you guys are working hard to try to bring all fishing together.
Well, I think the reason we want to make it inclusive is just that it's not like at least not that we know of at the moment. There's not a huge audience. So we
Yeah,
we want to encourage anyone who just enjoys being on the water to be a part of it. I myself kind of um, I gravitates towards fly fishing now just because I find it more interesting. Um, if I lived on the ocean and had a boat and wanted to troll for you know deep water fish all the time, I might have a different view of fishing right now. But given
yeah.
where I'm at, and you know, it's just fly fishing is just very very interesting. You have to kind of immerse yourself in it to succeed in it. So I like to obsess about hobbies.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit because I went for my first time fly fishing about 2 or 3 weeks ago in Colorado. A friend
Hmm.
of ours named Justin out there, and
Hmm.
my first experience with fly fishing at all, and it's just a whole nother culture. And uh, I know he's working hard to try to blend that together too, not putting bait fishing down or making fly fishing sound like it's this whole other elevated thing where they're two completely separate things, but we want to be united at the same time. How did you two both get into fishing and maybe particularly fly fishing? Because I think, Lisa, that's what you have pretty much always done. Is that correct?
No, when I was a kid, I was definitely, using more conventional fishing. Um, a lot of like, I grew up in Georgia, so we were bass fishing. The like
Yeah.
bass boats that go 80 miles an hour. Yes, exactly. Although that when I was just a little bit older than that, we actually got I got like a 14-foot John boat and a motor from Santa Claus. Like my dad couldn't get the boat in the house to put it under the tree, so that was just like moved up in the porch. But there's actually a motor and a gas tank underneath the tree for my brother. So, but no, I got into fly fishing a lot. The first time I got into it was when I was in the North Georgia mountains for a summer doing summer stock. I was doing theater, and they have a lot of brook trout streams there. Um, I had no idea what I was doing, but I actually learned to fish where I would just use the fly rod and actually fish with worms, like live worms, which I didn't know was kind of like sacrilegious. Um, but it was a great way to learn how to fly fish actually, because there's a lot of very similar to the techniques that we do now with like tight lining and stuff like that. The way that you are just drifting, you're either drifting bait through a hole or you're drifting, artificial uh, insects through a hole, but it's the same technique.
Yeah.
Um,
Jacob, maybe you can take it a little bit farther too on that and telling us like what really is the difference between fly fishing and regular fishing? Say somebody's watching and they have no fishing experience whatsoever, and what we're saying right now sounds completely foreign to them. Can you break that down a little
Sure,
bit for them?
sure. I mean, the basic fly fishing and conventional fishing share the same basic principles. You have the same tools. You have a rod, you have a fishing line, and you have a fishing lure. The difference really lies in where the weight is. In conventional fishing, you could have any kind of artificial bait, plastic bait, spoons, spinners, jigs, bottom rigs. That's where all the weight lies. So for you to cast your lure out into the water, um, the weight of the lure is what loads the rod in conventional fishing. Uh, this is different for fly fishing because you are using a lure that is weighs very little. It is a hook that is wrapped with natural and synthetic fibers into a pattern that is mimicking a fly, like an actual bug fly is what I'm talking about. And those weigh so little that to cast them out a significant distance, that potential energy has to come from somewhere. So that weight is actually in the line on your fly line, because what you do is as you're doing a forward and back cast, which is there are many different types of fly casts, but that's the simplest method is forward and back casting. What you're doing is you're transferring that potential energy, and it is loading the rod. And then as you cast forward and back, you're slowly advancing the weight of that line out of the rod so that you can get the distance for your cast. But everything remains the same. You are casting a lure at a fish, targeting a fish, and you are drifting it through the fishing hole or over the fish, which is the same for conventional fishing and fly fishing. With fly fishing, you're just relying more on drifts and the flow of the water, whereas in conventional fishing, you're either sitting your rig on the bottom, bouncing it up and down, or pulling it through the water by reeling it in.
Yeah, and share with us too a little bit about because whenever you see fly fishing, you are always seeing them in the water, sometimes from boats or rafts. But share with us why people are usually in the water when they're doing this.
Sure. Um, so fly fishing requires a lot of space. It doesn't have to, but it generally does. Because you are casting forward and backwards, you have a lot of line in the air, you have a lot of line that's traveling. And I would say that a typical cast, you cannot really cast as far as some other conventional methods of casting. Um, and so you kind of have to walk out into the water to get away from trees, branches, um, and to get a little bit closer to your target, which is the fish. So typically you're seeing fly fishermen that are either wet wading without waders or wading in waders to get a little bit closer to their target.
I would say
Yeah,
you
so
could compare fly fishing to hunting, where it's like deer hunting with a rifle and deer hunting with a bow and arrow. With a bow and arrow,
yeah,
you're a compound bow. Still, you're gonna have to get so much closer. Be so much more precise than you are with a rifle or a shotgun. So you see people getting in the water for a lot of that reason. But I've also taken Jacob to some of my um, more less luxury fishing holes where you're fishing in little tiny streams like Little Spring Creek, and there is nowhere to get into the water because it's like this little creek. Um, and that's when you have to get creative with your roll cast and all kinds of stuff.
I usually end up in the trees.
I was going to say there was one point when Justin and I were fishing, and we tried a little bit from the shore, and that just was not a good situation for me. But then at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, this particular stream, so remember I had never been before whatsoever. We get to this river. We decide, he decides, it'd be really funny if he's watching right now. But he decides we're not going to do waders and that we're just wearing these boots. And we wade in, and immediately my feet turn to ice because we're in the mountains in Colorado. And I'm just thinking, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And he's like actually teaching me right then, and I'm not paying attention at all to what he's saying because I'm just thinking,
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand in this water because it's so cold. And then he hands me the reel and was like, here you go. And I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't even catch any of that because this is so cold. I was relieved later because when he first walked in, he was like, oh, this isn't so bad. Then after about 30 minutes, he was like, oh, yeah, this is really, really cold. And we ended up switching streams because our feet were just so cold. But
Uh-huh.
it was a really fun experience, and I would like to do it again. Um, but it takes time. It's not something I think, at least, that you can just like do here and there and become proficient at it because the cast is so different and so difficult, can be so difficult. But it's fun. It's challenging for people to get into. Have you
Did
guys,
you catch
either
a
of you,
fish?
what's that?
Did you catch a fish?
You're going to ask me that while we're live? No, actually,
Yes.
I didn't. So Justin, I think he caught three or four. Another girl that was with us caught like five or six. They kept saying that I was missing setting the hook, and I was never even noticing a bite. They say that they apparently trout take it so gentle that maybe I was having a lot of bites and didn't didn't even notice it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had a lot of fun. But I would like to catch one someday, so maybe we'll have to
Well, that's
go.
all that matters. Having fun is really all that matters. I mean, I invested so much time in the beginning. I mean, I grew up fishing since a toddler. My parents and grandparents were taking me fishing, and so I had a lot of fishing technique already under my belt when I started fly fishing. When Lisa introduced me to fly fishing, um, we found out after working together and becoming friends that we shared this common interest of fishing. And so she's like, "Have you ever been fly fishing?" And I was like, "No." And so she took me, and I was hooked, even though I wasn't catching anything either. I mean, we went on multiple trips, and I would be out there in the rain in my waders, casting and casting and casting and catching nothing. Um, but it's really about immersing yourself into learning all of the details and
Yeah.
practicing your presentation. It's super important to do that and to not get discouraged. That's actually the first fish that I caught up on the screen right
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
now. And so that was after months and months of me practicing. Um, and you just have to stick with it because you're lucky if you catch wild trout on your first outing.
Well, then I guess I don't feel so bad. I do want to remind all of our viewers that are watching right now live that if you want to ask any questions to Lisa or Jacob, feel free to put those in the comments next to it, and we will try to get to those. Because we do want to be able to really answer any questions and educate you so that you can do this yourself. If people were wanting to start this on their own, like they're watching this video, they've never gone fishing before, maybe not even bait fishing or anything, but they say, this sounds interesting to us, which I personally believe there is this emergence going on right now of the LGBTQ people getting involved with fly fishing, which I think is really cool and interesting. But people say they're watching this and they want to, but it looks so complicated. Where can anyone start? Like, do you recommend YouTube videos? Do you recommend going and just getting a poll and trying to figure it out? Because there's so much that goes into it. It can be overwhelming. Even the line, I learned that you go from your casting line to a smaller line to a smaller line that finally attaches to the fly. So there's a lot to it, and it can be overwhelming. Where would somebody start?
I think one of the really good places to start is so Orvis. Not that I'm, for any reason promoting Orvis, other than I do think that they do a very good job of getting people into the sport. Orvis is very accessible. If you live, they're in most cities. Seems like now. They have like a Orvis 101, which is the most basic fly fishing program you could find, and it's like a 1 day thing. If you don't live near like a trout stream, they're still going to do it for like bass fishing and ponds and stuff like that. And they basically just spend a day with you, and it's geared towards people who have never picked up a fly rod in their life. Um, and I can't remember if there's even a fee for the 101 class. I think it might be free, and then they also give you a bunch of discounts if you buy stuff. But that's a good way. I know there's other, any of your local fly shops probably have some kind of day or afternoon that they'll do like that. I also think it's really like one of the reasons for starting QueerBait is to attract people like that. Like if there's anyone in our area, we would totally take them fishing for a day because even if you buy like the most basic setup you can find, you would literally be spending $300 or $400 just to get the rod and the waders and the line and the bare minimum that you would need to go fishing. So if you can find someone, you know, meeting someone online or through a group, or maybe you have a friend who has like extra gear, uh, hook up with them and just go spend a day. Try to find a way to invest some time in it before buying stuff because it is an expensive sport. You can definitely waste money on stuff that you don't need.
Yeah, and one thing I learned while I was in Colorado too is we visited a fly shop that was really cool right on the river. It used to be an old mill. But you can also rent a lot of this stuff. Like you can rent waders. And I'm assuming you probably could rent poles and everything as well, depending on the fly shop that you're at. But I mean,
And
I don't know how much
investing
waders
in a
are alone, but
guide,
they're probably expensive.
yeah, investing in a day with a guide. I mean, you could probably do it anywhere from from 250 bucks up to 800 bucks, depending on what you're looking for. But that is a great thing to do. I mean, most, especially the private, mom and pop shops, you're gonna find guides in there who are gonna take you out and give you an excellent, excellent day. And that's, it's a little more pricey, but it's a way to have a really good experience.
Yeah, great
I mean,
recommendation.
for me, I would say what made it so nice easing into the sport. I wasn't convinced from the beginning that I was going to jump into this, and it really took Lisa, encouraging me like, let's go and do it. And then she's like, oh, and here's a rod that you can use, and here's waders that you can use. Lisa lent me her like first fly fishing bag and gave me a box and filled it full of flies, and that uh, you know just having all that extra gear really made it easy for me to just say, okay, I'm going to do this. Because there wasn't this daunting expense that I was going to have to invest in from the beginning into a sport that I didn't even know if I was going to like or not. And so that made it very easy for me. And as Lisa has done to me, I would offer that to someone else. If anyone came to me and said, "Hey, I want to try, I want to learn to fly fish. Would you take me so that I can experience it?" I mean, I would want to pass along that gesture to them, no matter who it is. I would be willing to do that. I think it's the right thing to do for our community.
That's awesome. And I love hearing that because that's so much about like what we want to do too, is like people don't know where to start and they have an outdoor activity that they want to get involved with. We want to be sure to help them out or connect them to somebody that can so that they can get outside and enjoy the great outdoors. So really cool that you're doing that. Um, curious, have you guys found any other LGBTQ organizations or people in your fishing adventures?
Um, I think it's just now starting to happen. I mean, honestly, we did not have much connection to the queer community as far as fishing or outdoors was related. But the moment we put up uh, the QueerBait Instagram site, um, we started connecting. I mean, we connected with you guys like immediately. Um, I mean, and again, Jacob made reference to the older generation. Like, Jacob is the one who figured out how to connect with everyone. I just, I'm lucky if I get one or two hashtags correct. Uh, Once that presence was kind of put out there, we really did start connecting with people. No one like super local yet. Like we haven't actually fished with anyone yet, but it's coming. I mean, it's tough right now in COVID. No one
Yeah,
can really travel that much, but it's
yeah,
happening.
that's great. As soon as COVID gets passed, you guys might be hit up a lot and want a lot of people to take them out with you, which would be really cool. We would love to hear those stories.
Yeah.
What are
Slide
some of
into
the
our DMs.
challenges? What was that?
I said slide into our DMs.
Right?
Hit us up
Um,
on Instagram.
and we are going to have their Instagram as well as anything that we talk about, any of those links in the description on this YouTube video later, so anybody can access those if they want to. Um, what kind of challenges have you guys faced along the way? I think that that's could be one thing that some people might be scared of. This could be a very white male masculine type of a thing. I'm starting to see a lot of that being broke down and love some of the connections I'm getting with other fly fishing people on Instagram. But I'm sure that there have been some challenges along the way, just of acceptance maybe. Um, how do you get past those, and what are some that you've faced?
Sure. So growing up hunting and fishing with my family members and family friends, My friends from high school, from like middle school, I've been hunting and fishing since I was little. I was in a deer stand in toddler size coveralls. Um, and so, with goose hunting, duck hunting, you're doing a lot of group activity. You have a lot of, friends, your peers. Um, and so I had established those friendships, when I was just Jacob. But then as Jacob grew, I did realize that I was a little different than everybody else. Um, and I realized that I was gay in the fifth grade. And there was some internal challenge in accepting that for myself, but I embraced it and I'm very happy with who I am today. And I was happy with, and proud to be gay in high school. But as I continued to hunt and fish with these friends that I've had, since my earlier years in school, um, there was definitely it got really challenging because they no longer wanted to go hunting and fishing, with the theater kid. Because in high school, middle school, I was totally involved in theater. Um, and so that became challenging because they realized I was different. I knew I was different. And they didn't really want to hang out with me anymore. And so that was challenging, but some of my really good true friends stuck with me, kept going fishing, kept going hunting, and we just talked about our common interest, which was hunting and fishing, and that's really kind of what broke down those barriers that kind of were created just by me coming out to them. And I think that's important to talk about as queer people are immersing themselves in an community, a fly fishing community, um, is that we have to be ourselves and we can use common interests and things that we can talk about to kind of break down those social norms.
Great response. Lisa, I'd like to know that about you too, because I'm not going to call you older, just more experienced.
Yes,
What kind of
more
challenges
experience.
have
Right.
what kind of challenges have you faced along the way?
Um, we're just talking about fishing.
Or in the
Um,
outdoors or anything, anybody that watches this,
yeah,
there's a lot that they can pull from it, whether it's something fishing or life related. So,
I think that it's interesting. So, as a trans woman, you know, fishing and outdoors um, can still be very sexist. So, it's very male driven.
yeah,
We're definitely breaking out of that, but that's still, the norm. That's what's expected. Um, so it was very interesting to, I lived the first 28 years of my life presenting male, where I could walk into any of these environments and there was no question or second glance or anything like that. Um, and what's interesting is that, as a trans woman, on, you know, I get to experience what's called passing privilege. I don't know if it's actually really a privilege, but basically what that means is I can walk into an environment and people don't pick up on the fact that I'm trans. Um, and but what happens then in like fishing or other outdoor experiences is that I start to experience, what my cisgendered female friends experience with just kind of the sexism that exists in outdoor sports. So, not even about being looked upon as trans, it's just being looked at as female. Um, and there's nothing more satisfying than being able to walk into a male environment and walk out of the stream with catching the biggest fish. It's very fun. I
Yes.
like doing it. Um, but you know, I would reiterate what Jacob is saying in that these kind of common interests that we have with people who, you know, with with the cis and hetero world, it is a way to find a common bond with each other. And when you have a passion or a hobby, it breaks down those social norms that we've all been kind of forced and uh, these learned behaviors that we all live by. Um, and so I think like what you guys are doing, and even QueerBait, just being visible is breaking down these barriers much
Yeah.
quicker, and encouraging people to come in and not wait to be invited into this space, but to like just walk in and make your space. You
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely. I love that. I'd love to hear a couple stories maybe from the both of you about maybe your favorite outdoor experience, whether that's fishing or something else. Just, I think one of the biggest things for me when it comes to outdoors is every time I go out, I have just this, I don't know how to describe it even, just this connection, where it's just peaceful, it's relaxing, you're connecting to the nature around you. And that goes for no matter what you're doing, hiking or watching a sunrise or going out and stargazing or fishing, whatever it is. But sometimes we just have those moments that really define what we're doing and why we like to do it. And maybe that's, I know that one photo, if anybody knows rainbow trout, and I believe that, and here I go saying, I believe that was a rainbow trout that you had that photo of that we showed earlier of you and Lisa. That seemed like there was a really big rainbow trout. So that maybe that was a moment that was just this really cool story. But if either of you have some cool stories that you would like to share, we'd love to hear those as well.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I can. I mean, my I was thinking about this today when I saw your question about that. I think I would one of my best experiences is when I was living in Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts, and I that's when I really got into trout fishing. And there was a river near me called the Hoosick River. It's kind of like a secret, that there's not a lot of trout in it, but there's very large trout in it. And that's when I really got into it, and I was kind of on my own because there weren't a lot of people fishing there, and I had to work really, really hard. I probably fished 6 or 7 months when just not catching anything for days on end. Um, and then finally, one afternoon, catching probably the biggest brown trout I've ever caught. When brown trout get really big, they start getting a hooked jaw like a salmon does. And it's like a 20-inch fish that I ended up catching. And I had just gotten to the point where I was actually knew the type of fly I was fishing with, and I had a reason why I was fishing with it on that day. So it was a very educated guess on what I should be doing. And then it just all came together. Um, and it was it. I've had days when I would catch a fish like that, and you just think, well, that's amazing. It's not going to get any better than that, and I would literally just stop. And that stuff will go out. I've been fishing for like an hour. I could have fished the rest of the day, and I was like, I'm just gonna stop and like
Stop while you're ahead.
enjoy the fact that this happened. Um, so that's probably one of my favorite fish that I've ever caught.
Really cool.
Um, for me, I would say that my like favorite moment so far was actually this past May. Lisa and I were fly fishing up in Penns Creek, which is in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania. This is located right around Poe Patty State Park, Poe Valley area, Bald Eagle State Forest. And let's see, this May I would have been fly fishing for about 2 years now. Um, and things were finally starting to come together for me. I was kind of on my own. At the beginning, Lisa and I would fish kind of near each other because uh, sharing tidbit, material, supplies.
He was using my stuff.
I was using her stuff. So at this at this point, I had established my own materials, all of my own tools, all of my own net, um, and we were dry fly fishing, and fish were rising everywhere. There was a massive hatch coming on, lots of flies coming off the water, fish coming up everywhere. And as you as you learn fly fishing, you learn about casting, you learn about the presentation, you learn how to read the water, you learn how to identify a lot of different flies. So I had invested a lot of time into identifying flies, because when the big hatch is happening, you could have multiple different flies that are coming off the water, and the trout that are rising could maybe only be eating one species of fly, and so you have to figure out what fly they're eating. And so that night, it was in the evening, the sun was setting. Um, I saw this pretty decent sized fish keep rising, and he was constantly eating. And I was like, okay, I'm going after it. So I like weighed out super far. It was pretty deep. I was, almost up to my chest in water, because he was on the other side of the creek. And I fished. I targeted that fish and cast at that fish for, I'd say, at least an hour and a half, almost 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
I was trying to get as many perfect drifts over the fish as I could. I was switching out my flies. I'd see a different type of fly float by, and I'd be like, "Oh, I gotta change it." So it's kind of this trial and error, as you learn. And so I switched out like 6 different flies at this point. I was clearly making mistakes and not identifying the flies properly, but I was learning, and I was persistent and I was patient. And I remember getting so frustrated and so upset with myself because this fish was eating all of the other flies on the water except for mine. And I had this like huge, like, I was cussing at the fish. Lisa's laughing upstream. And I remember just looking up and seeing a fly in the air, called a spinner. It was a marsh brown spinner, flying around above me. And I was like, oh, that's what it's eating. That has to be what it's eating. I hadn't tried it yet. So I took my fly off. I tied on a marsh brown spinner. Second cast over the fish, he just like came up and demolished my fly, and I had fish on. And so having all that patience and persistence and just keep going at it till I figured it out, when I actually had the fish in my hands, it was so rewarding for me, and I felt so accomplished because I was like, okay, I figured it out. Like, this was me, all me, and I figured it out, and I have the fish, and here it is. And then I was like, okay, Lisa, you have to get a really cute picture of me now because I just spent 2 hours.
And I
Oh.
fell in the water trying to get them.
And she fell.
And that's so awesome. And those memories are like so much about what the outdoors is about. So I love that you shared that.
Mhm.
I want to do a quick shout out to Confluence Collective that's watching right now. I don't know if you guys are connected with them or not, but you definitely should be. If you're not, they're doing awesome things in the fly fishing world as well. So
Yeah,
thanks
thank
guys
you
for
guys
watching.
for sharing. Yeah, thank you guys, for sharing our, story today on Instagram. Thanks for that.
Very cool. Um, let's talk a little bit about the LGBT community and what we can do um, to be more accepting and try to educate people more on fly fishing, fishing, the outdoors, because it seems like as much as we should be a community that doesn't want to discriminate and wants to be all inclusive, we still have a lot of work to do. Um,
Mhm.
so what maybe can we do as LGBT Outdoors and the LGBT LGBTQ community in general to be um, more inclusive to all outdoor activities and fly fishing?
Sure. Um, so as Lisa kind of mentioned earlier, we don't need to be invited into a space. We have to be brave and we have to claim our own space. And we need to encourage others along and help others, to build up that confidence to make that step. Um, and you know, we need to advocate for equality, and we need to show people that we are just like everybody else. Um, and I think that a lot of that can be communicated through organizations like LGBTQ Outdoor and QueerBait, to encourage businesses like Orvis and Cabela's and Bass Pro and other fly shops, local fly shops, to participate in diversity, equity, and inclusion training. It's something that is super important, that other businesses, um, outside of the industry, construction, education. There's a lot of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion training that's happening, so that people know how to include others, and how to self-evaluate, to know what the roadblocks are for their particular organization, to improve the inclusion, equity, and diversity of their customer base, of their employees, and how just to make their business more inclusive to everyone. I think that's something that we can advocate, to those businesses, for the queer community. Like, hey, you guys should be participating in this, because if you do, it's going to make it easier for, a gay man, a transgender female, a person that identifies as queer to come in and introduce themselves. And when they say my pronouns are they, them, theirs, they know how to respond to that. And it's super important that we try to help these businesses know that these kind of programs exist, and how they can benefit from them.
That's awesome. Great,
Yeah,
great advice right there.
I think that what we are doing here right now is we're showing visibility, right? And we're being open and honest about who we are, and expressing our interest. When I think about like my responsibility as a trans person, and also as a white trans person, that I still have privilege to walk down the street with white skin, and how does that experience, being trans gives me the empathy to kind of think about other people's experience who are a minority or marginalized in any way. And not that fly fishing is changing the world, but I just have this thought about, like, if a trans person going into a fly shop and buying a pair of waders or a pair of boots, as Jacob said, trans woman, and I thought, oh, what about the trans guy who's going to be wearing a woman's size shoe? And that's like,
Yeah.
to walk into a shop that's this like very macho cis environment and be able to just deal with that, like, that's a lot to deal with. I mean, the last time I went and bought waders, I said, well, I'm looking for this, this, and this. And yes, you probably will have to get the male size because I'm 6 foot and like I wear a size 12 in women's shoes. So, that's the kind of like details we have to get to break down, because that's like where, the minority person or the marginalized person when they walk into an environment like that. Those are the details that are causing fear for them and uncertainty on how this situation is going to go.
Really, really great advice from both of you. Thank you so much for that. I think that little nuggets in itself is worth watching this whole thing for. So good. Um, we're gonna be wrapping up here in a minute, but before we do, I would love it if somebody is watching and again thinking about this, uh, what would you say to encourage them to go ahead and take the step and pursue this and give it a shot?
I mean, I'm the kind of person that uh, whenever I've been interested in something, I just go do it. And that's kind of my personality. But you know, someone who's unsure of it, I mean, don't hesitate. Email us on our slide into our DMs. That's what the children say. Um, and onto Instagram, and then Jacob will tell me we got a message. Um, but if you're in this area or looking on your website for other people who are into whatever outdoor activity you are, like don't be afraid to reach out and connect. Like that's why we're all doing this, is because we want to create that community. So take advantage of the resources that are around you, and like, you know, uh, if you're queer and afraid of stepping out there, um, we're pushing the door down, right? So
Yeah,
so get on board.
yeah,
Don't live in that fear. We as queer people, like we should expect these kind of privileges in our lives. We should not be knocking on the door waiting for someone to let us in. If that's your passion, then go for your passion. You deserve it.
absolutely. That's awesome.
Totally.
Jacob, did you have anything you want to add to
Uh,
that?
yeah, I think that there are a lot of other um, people out there like LGBTQ Outdoors. There are a lot of other accounts, Instagram accounts, Facebook pages, blogs that are doing what QueerBait is doing and what LGBTQ Outdoors is doing. Find somebody, whether they're across the country or maybe in your hometown, and reach out to them and just start the conversation. It might just take talking through fly fishing, on a more, one-on-one basis, talking about the challenges, advice, um, the tools that you do need, the tools that you don't need to buy because there's a lot of stuff out there that you don't need to buy, and just start that conversation with someone. Find a friend, um, and if you can't find a friend, then hit us up on Instagram. Eventually, we will have a website. Eventually, we'll have a Facebook page, and we do have an email, but it's not on our Instagram right now. But we're always there to answer any questions. And I feel like a lot of local fly shop owners, they want your business, they want your money. So go in there and introduce yourself. Don't assume that the employees or the owner is going to discriminate. There is a lot going on in the world right now, and so it is a time to kind of break everything that's going on in the world down, and let's just all be humans and you know interact with each other and be nice to
Yeah,
each other. And I think a lot of
yeah,
people are doing that, and I think that it is a time where we can walk into this random fly shop and be like, hi, my name is Jacob. Hi, my name is Lisa, and I like to fly fish, and or I'm interested in fly fishing, and I think they're going to help you. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of good people out there, so don't assume that all fly fishing people are bad.
yeah.
Just don't assume that they're going to discriminate. Give them a chance.
Love it. Great, great advice. We'll go ahead and pop up your Instagram account one more time. Can you go ahead and tell our viewers what your email is in case they don't have an Instagram and they want to reach out to you?
Sure. It is queerbaitfishing@gmail.com.
QueerBaitFishing@gmail.com. Awesome. I just want to thank you guys one more time for doing this and coming on live. I think everything you had to say tonight was spot on and awesome and very educational and encouraging. And so I hope that any of our viewers that are watching that even had a slight interest in fly fishing or anything outdoors will take the courage and go ahead and step out and try it. So thank you guys for coming, Lisa and Jacob. And I hope you guys have a great evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We want to remind you that we've got our website you can check out for a lot of resources, read past blogs, submit a blog. It's lgbtoutdoors.com. Also, we are trying to build our YouTube following, so we would love it if you'd subscribe to this video, give it a like, share it, any of those things we would be super grateful for. Until next time, remember to be kind, be true, and be you.